Hello and welcome to the Michael Mama Show, Ancient Secrets Revealed. We're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And hey, Scotty, how you doing?
Good.
That's good. Punjaji and Lakshmi are in South India now, and they'll be getting ready to perform that 10,000 Linga Archana. And it's right on the banks of the Krishna River where they're doing it, right where Arjuna performed some penance to receive a, like a supernatural, if you will, weapon from Shiva, in the Ramayana.
Wow.
That's pretty cool, Yeah. Today, well, first of all, I'm considering doing a class in California. Probably go back to Walnut Creek, Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, maybe in the spring. Just thinking about it. Maybe we'll do that. Also, I had a nice little, with a small group of old students. I did a Skype conference call a few weeks ago. It was great. It was very enjoyable, and I think they all liked it. And so I'm thinking about doing that again. It's just a matter of having someone set it up and that, but I think we'll get it done. And we'll probably need to add a few names. If there's anybody listening to this who's been through the program and that, then they'd be eligible to join in. It's free, so you could just, I guess, email the office, your contact information, email, and we could do that, assuming we actually move forward with it. But I think we'll do it. I enjoyed it, and I think everybody else did too. So Sat Yuga, the phase transition, it's going on. Well, I'll tell you, if you're watching the news, you can't help but seeing there are a lot of major changes going on. And as we predicted, in the 2025 predictions, still a lot of chaos, a lot of conflict. And the weather, I mentioned that we're going to have some serious weather here, and it's certainly hitting the Midwest of the United States already. So I think we have more of that to look forward to coming up. But I think it's a good time. There are going to be lots of upcoming changes, and it's important to be prepared because see, the things that nature was allowing or supporting, that's going to change. It's going to become more consistent with the true nature of existence as opposed to the karmic winds that are blowing in the Rakshasa global consciousness, and people then who are adhering to those old principles are going to have a harder and harder time to continue with that. And I'm talking about things like, Scotty, racism, greed, corruption, all those things are going to start to fall by the wayside. And the people that are adhering to those things are going to have a hard time, So I think it's a good time for us all to review our value system, review our belief systems, and make some choices, make some decisions. Otherwise, you're going to be going up against a massive wave. And we've seen it in some, for example, I think it's so well known that certainly in the United States and different countries in Europe, I think religion is kind of fewer and fewer people are going to the churches and considering themselves a Christian, for example. Uh, and so what's going to come of that? Because you see, I think there's a mentality and there's an intelligence. They're more educated now than they were 100 years ago, for example. And so they need a more sophisticated understanding of their religion. And when it's not provided, at some point, it's just a matter, to a great degree, it's just a matter of nomenclature. The way things are said, they kind of portray the unified field and God, if you will, as some sort of otherworldish astral being that sits on a cloud. You know, I've talked about that. And they're just not buying it. But not buying it, you know, what we're going to find is they're not actually rejecting religion. What they're actually doing is, if they know it or not, is they're, and this will become more and more clear as these changes happen, but what's actually happening is that they're demanding a more sophisticated understanding of, I got to shut this phone off, a more sophisticated understanding of religion and spirituality. The old approaches just aren't doing it anymore, you know? So that's all going to change. And what that's going to happen concurrently, you see, as I've said, we all have a certain sense of our own, you know, what word would you use? Divinity or spirituality or sense of unity with all that is, or even, we can even call it a survival instinct. There's something deep inside of us that we know is precious and it's very intimate to us and all important, you know? And what's going to happen though is as we move more and more fully into Sat Yuga, that connection is going to become stronger. It's going to become clearer, and it's going to become ever increasingly understood. So the old ways of expressing it, you know, we're all one with God, that's true and that's beautiful, but there's going to be a more sophisticated understanding of what that really means and how that really works, and the whole mechanic of creation in all fields of life, not just spirituality, but our relationship with the unified field and how it connects to all things and supports all things and is the foundation in every field of life. That's just going to become ever increasingly self-evident. Well, it just comes to mind, you know, the judicial system, for example, talking about major transformation that's around the corner. You know, if you look at even world history, like with the Nazis and the Soviet Union and just countries all over, the judicial system became ever increasingly politicized and a source of lawfare where you can punish your opponents just by using a corrupt legal system. And there, we're not just talking on the international global scale. We're talking right down to small localities, towns, cities, counties. You know, just an example, there was a time when we became aware that there was, we could call it corruption of in the legal system. It was an attorney that was coercing testimony and things like that. And I mentioned that to my attorney and said, shouldn't we say something? Shouldn't somebody go to a judge and say, hey, we came to our awareness that this thing is going on. Something has to be done. And his response was that, no, you can't do that. He said, because if you do, you get a reputation among all the other attorneys in the area, and none of them want to deal with you. I mean, that's incredible, Someone subsequently told me that what's usually done in a situation like that, if you want to proceed, is you hire an attorney from a completely different part of the state. Which I didn't even know that at the time. But the point is that kind of corruption and that kind of lawfare exists on all sorts of levels, not just the political level. And we're going to see that change. We're going to see that change. And that'll be very important, a very good change. So the idea that there's one thing that supports all of life, the unified field, that we're all connected to it, we're going to start functioning in a manner ever increasingly that's allegiant to that, more consistent with that, more in harmony with that, and it's going to become spontaneous. People are going to start having better values, Our relationship with money is going to change dramatically. Right now, when it comes right down to it, even people that consider themselves very spiritual, and this is in all religions that I know of, but even the people that consider themselves very spiritual, when it comes right down to it, the one thing that is the way they behave, it's like their real God isn't, God as the embodiment of the unified field, if we want to put it that way, but it's rather money. When money gets involved, people's values, they really go out the window. Like I say, you can justify anything with the intellect, and they do, to justify their greed, their lust for money, and all their moral convictions go out the window to an extent where they're not even saying to themselves, oh, I'm betraying my moral convictions. No, they don't even think that way. They spin the whole situation to justify it with the intellect so that they can go for the money. And that's going to change as our value system becomes more and more pure, as we become more and more connected with the unified field. We're going to stand true to our real morals. Does that make sense, Scotty?
Yeah.
The way I'm saying it? Yeah. Yeah. And so fear will run our lives less and less. It doesn't mean we're going to just proceed with reckless abandon, but we're going to have more courage to proceed in the face of something fearful. We're going to have more courage to proceed. That is to say, to move in a direction that what is right. I'm going to use the word righteous, but that's almost, in Kali Yuga right now, the word righteous is almost has negative connotations, I think. I don't know. Also, the weather patterns. And this, I remember I was 21, I think. And, we were sitting with Maharshi, and he was talking about a similar thing. What's the Age of Enlightenment going to be about? He phrased it a little differently. He said, no more horrible storms. And he said, no more horrible storms where there are people. And that's a stretch, because for many people, because it's so incredible and it's so not consistent with the current, Kali Yuga mentality. So we're going to start to appreciate. The point is, we're going to start to appreciate more the power of global consciousness to influence the laws of nature, the weather, all levels, all aspects of life. the seasons and will come and go. The rains will come and go in a manner conducive with the health of people. It says in the Bible somewhere that I can't remember where, but it's a beautiful verse, but it talks about how, it's human beings that are the custodians of the birds and the trees and the whole planet. And that doesn't mean it's not about passing laws really in a superficial sense like that, but it's about when our connection, we are very powerful in nature. Human beings are powerful forces in nature. And when we align more and more fully with nature, then our consciousness influences global consciousness, influences all aspects of existence, the health of the planet. When you look and see pollution in the air, that's a byproduct of pollution of global consciousness. You're not going to get rid of the pollution in the air really to a significant extent unless you purify global consciousness. And even our attempts to do it, I mean, they're just ludicrous, really. I mean, okay, fine, the United States is passing all these regulations and everything and strict controls on car emissions and factory emissions and getting rid of petrochemical sources and that kind of thinking. Whereas all we really accomplish when we do that is start funding, Venezuela or India or whatever, China, countries that are employing technologies that pollute even more. So really, and even like with electric cars, I mean, studies are there that electric cars pollute more than gas engine cars, particularly now with the gas engine cars that can be made that are so pollution free. And that's true when it comes to manufacturing of the batteries for electric cars. That pollutes more than just driving a gas-powered car would pollute in its whole lifetime, All that is going to change. Also, there are so many technologies out there that we have. It's not even really about doing R&D and developing new technologies so much as it's about allowing these new technologies to be implemented. And that's the whole thing tied up in the arena of greed. I mean, let's say there's an energy source that's pure and clean and healthy and available to all the people, which like even Tesla said that it was there and he knew about it. But there's so much money behind the energy sources, gas and oil and all that the powers that be have so much money. The people that control those industries have so much money that they control the government, and they do whatever they have to do to disallow the manifestation of that energy source. And that's all going to change. Even in the medical industry, it's going to change. They're making these medicines and these pharmaceutical companies. There's so much money in it that, I mean, how do they make their money? They make their money off of disease. That's how they profit. Disease is, for them, it's a good thing because it's making them rich. So where's the real motivation to eliminate disease? The motivation is more to keep the disease going, but be able to manage it with things they can make money off of. Fear and greed. It's all going to change. It's all going to change. And even in our own lives and how we choose to live and make money and stuff, you need to keep that in mind. Nobility is going to be rewarded ever increasingly as the golden age emerges. Now, racism is an interesting question. I like to say that cultural integrity is racism gone insane. Because there will be in fact, there will even be an increase in cultural integrity, not a decrease. It won't be a whitewashing of all humanity as much as an affirmation of the validity that different cultures are different, and it's a beautiful thing. And so there'll be an honoring of different cultures as opposed to a sort of a idea that there's one set of principles that need to be adhered to by all cultures. So international law is a very interesting field, you know. It's not going to go away. The laws will be different in Japan than they are in the United States or wherever. It's a good thing. Here's a touchy one for you: our relationship with animals. See, right now in the evolutionary process, what's happening, we could say there's even a bottleneck because there's a process, a hierarchy, a chain of spiritual evolution, consciousness evolution, we could say, of different species. And so as more and more people get enlightened, there's not the need for them to reincarnate back to Earth. They move on. And as a result, that makes room for souls of animals that are ready to move on and incarnate into a human body. But it's just blockaded. There's a bottleneck there, and that's going to change. And that's why we see a lot of these animals and pets and things, more and more, they're taking on human qualities, you know. There's even a thing about orangutans, I think it was, and how they're starting to use tools that, you know, Neanderthals developed, you know, ages ago. So we're going to see that whole thing open up. And as that opens up, our relationship with animals is going to be different. We still, well, of course, love animals. In a lot of ways, we'll love them even more. And people will still have pets if they choose to have pets or what have you. But there's going to be a greater level of spontaneous recognition of the fact that people are people and animals are animals. I know that's a delicate one. Scotty, you want to comment on that? Did I get myself into trouble by saying it?
No, I'm just, I hopefully just everything's purifying so that we can just be more in line with natural law and those kinds of things, you know?
Yeah, one saint said that people are people, animals are animals, and they should live separately.
Huh.
You know. And there is, for sure, if you can just feel, there's an energetic difference in different species. And so so there is a reality to the idea that if you're living in a community with people, then your environment is resonating with the nature of your own physiology. It's similar to the idea that when you meditate, it's, even if you have a loved one, it's best not to meditate holding hands or sitting pushed up against each other, because you have your own energy system, your own autonomy, and that needs to become full. When you're full within your own self, then you can give more to your loved ones. And it's a similar thing with animals. We'll still have pets, you know, farm animals, of course, all of that. But the whole thing will be structured in a way where we don't dissipate our energy or compromise our energy or their energy by sort of trying to commingle in that sense. Does that make sense, Scott?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Our relationships in general with diversity, this kind of goes into the thing about cultural integrity. it'll change. And again, we still honor diversity, but we have an ever increasing regard for cultural integrity. And that'll go right down to the integrity of a family. A lot of that seems to be getting whitewashed away, and it's almost like the government tells people how to raise their children and what their value system should be. Now, in the extreme cases, of course, there are things that are just inappropriate and not in tune with natural law. But really, the fundamental building block of cultures is the family unit. And that's going to be valued more. It's going to be honored more. And that's going to feed all of society. And they're even now recognizing, like they talk about, why is there so much crime in the inner city? And they talk about, well, that's because the family units aren't strong. And there's a lot of problems in that arena. That will change, It's going to change for the better. The leader of a country is a mirror of the group consciousness. And who is it that said that democracy comes about when there's no one that's fit to lead? But can you imagine having a global group consciousness of a nation that's healthy enough that it supports then the mirror of that group consciousness as an enlightened leader? Boy, would that change things. And also this idea of, two political parties. I get it. And in Kali Yuga, I guess it's necessary because, absolute power corrupts absolutely, that idea. But can you imagine if the allegiance to a political party wasn't greater than the allegiance to the nation? And you can argue that these days the allegiance to a political party is more important than the allegiance to a nation. And how do you know that? Just look at the behavior. It just doesn't make any sense that when a bill comes up in Congress, every single Democrat, with maybe the exception of one or two, but oftentimes every single one, they all vote the same way and the Republicans the other way. Something's wrong with that. That's allegiance to a political party. It's not really the allegiance to the health of a nation. I just can't believe that. It's about allegiance to political parties. So patriotism is going to be on the rise. And the military and their role in that. See, the role of the military isn't really embraced or understood at large. They have to be prepared for war, and they really need to make that strong, and that's all true. But the military is so much more than that. The military is a embodiment and an upholder of exquisite values. Truth, honor, integrity. What are all the different buzzwords, Scotty, that are oftentimes associated with the military, Yeah. So there's a nobility there, there's an integrity there, and just by the nature of their very existence as part of the whole system, they uphold those exquisite values. We're going to see that more and more. And I think, to my experience, there are a lot of people in the military that hold those values and embody those values and believe in those values and honor those values. But I'm talking about that quality being recognized by the people at large and the role of the military in that regard. We're going to see that increase. And the last thing that's really interesting, and again, see, what we get into here is that we can hear these concepts and, okay, I understand that, I get that. But if it doesn't resonate with the depth of our being, if our relationship with the unified field isn't clear enough, then we don't really resonate with all the values and the subtler values that are inherent in the unified field. In other words, natural law, the support of nature, living in harmony with nature, what that really means. And when that connection isn't strong, a lot of the principles, for example, in the Veda, so much is in the Veda. How in the world is it that people, would turn their back on Vedic knowledge? Well, it becomes more and more elusive as people's physiologies become cruder and cruder. And then they start to replace an adherence with natural law, which what the Veda is an expression of, to an allegiance with a paradigm that they get off of the evening news. And so what's going to happen then is, as society evolves, and they may not even call it Veda, they probably will, eventually they would, but an understanding of what Veda is, what Vedic literature is, what it offers, the power of it, even the language of Sanskrit, things like that, a language that's consistent with nature itself, an expression of nature itself. All that is going to start to be understood and embraced more and more fully. And so then we'll start to understand too, a really important thing. We'll understand just how different the ages are, how different Kali Yuga is from Sat Yuga, from Dwapar Yuga, all like that. Right now, we can't do it, really, by and large. We can't do it. It's said that in the transition into Kali Yuga, chariots used to ride 6 inches off the ground. The wheels didn't touch the ground. I mean, how many people can really be okay with that? I don't think too many. But then in the transition from that Yuga to the next, when we entered Kali Yuga, the chariots kind of fell down and were supported on the ground, touching the ground. That in and of itself is hard, I think, for people to accept. I mean, it's like, I can't believe that. Also, the whole thing with havans and pujas and archana and all that. The power of those things is difficult for people to accept. And also, when the global consciousness is so gunked up, then the power of those procedures is to a great extent employed not to affect a particular change so much as to dissolve all the gunk in global consciousness as it purifies global consciousness to move things in these directions of harmony with nature. And so as that process continues, people are going to recognize it more and more fully, and they're going to start to realize, wow, all these different principles that are all expressed in the Veda. The Veda talks about all the different yugas and the laws of nature and what existence was like in those yugas. And right now, the very idea that the laws of nature change is just too foreign to the modern mentality. That's going to change. Make sense, Scotty?
Yes, absolutely does.
Okay. All right. I think that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. And we'll talk again next week.